Hello and welcome to another episode of India and Global Left. If you are new to the show, please smash that subscribe button. Also consider becoming a YouTube member, a Patreon, or donate small amounts given in the link in the description box. But the least you could do is to watch this show, like, share, and comment. Without further ado, let me welcome our very special guest tonight, Anthony Aguilar. Anthony is a retired U.S. Army soldier, and he has worked as a security subcontractor for the Israeli and US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in Palestine. He has the sole distinction, as far as I know, of being a whistleblower of all those who resigned from their contracts with the ZHF. Anthony, welcome to India and Global Left.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
We have been covering this genocide ever since it started. We had been covering Palestine even before this started, but this is our first time. This is our first opportunity to talk to someone who has witnessed the horrors that have been unfolding. So, my broad goal in this conversation would be to extract as much of the details, like the minute details that you witnessed there. So that's the broad overview. And I want to start by asking this question about what made you to join or sign a contract with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And I'm asking this because just when the media reports came out that this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has decided to distribute the food aid, contrary to all the UN-run sites. I spoke to Norman Finkelstein, who is a scholar on Gaza, and he said that all they would do is to pull kraut and then fire at in the disguise of attempting crowds. So he and I asked him, like, how do you know it? And he said that there have been multiple precedences when the IDF takes control of these so-called aid delivery programs. That's what they do. And he said that if anyone could deliver aid, it has to be this UN-run organizations, along with all the umbrella organizations. They could do it, not the IDF. But you surely must have different expectations. What were your expectations when you signed your contract?
So when I signed my contract in mid-May, so I didn't have a contract directly with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. When I signed my contract, I was not aware of what the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was. I signed my contract with UG Solutions, which is a subcontract to provide security. So I signed a contract as an independent security contractor with UG Solutions to provide security in Gaza for the distribution of humanitarian aid. What I thought going in, what my understanding going in was that, so what I did not know what I did not know, but what I did know at the point was that the United Nations was unable to deliver aid into the enclave because they were blocked by Israel. So it's a fact that aid was not going into Gaza. The reasons for that, the politics behind that, are far from my decision or my influence. But I felt that if this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was going to be providing aid into the enclave to feed starving people, to provide aid to a community desperately in need, that I wanted to be a part of that. And the notion that was described to me in terms of what we would be doing was that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or this mechanism for aid, would be replacing the entire UN process, and would not only replace it but do it better. So that's the notion that I went in on, and why I accepted this mission, because I wanted to help. I felt that there was a dire need. People were starving. People were dying from lack of food and water. And I signed on to this contract because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to help.
If you could tell us what was your first impression once you arrived in Israel? Where did you arrive? And from there on, how would you describe the kind of work that you did going into Palestine, in Gaza in particular?
So I arrived in Israel on the 19th of May, early morning. No, excuse me, 18th of May. My initial impressions from the company that I worked with UG Solutions, my initial impressions was that it was very disorganized. It was very seemed like thrown together, haphazard. Not a lot of planning went into how this was going to be executed, and that concerned me from day one. But I also then felt that okay, this is a very big operation. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of complexity to this, and that we're figuring this out as we do it because it's the first time something like this has been done with a privatized company. Mind you, I fully recognize that that delivering aid, that this is not the first time it's been done in terms of GHF. The United Nations has been doing this for decades, and they've been doing it very well. So my position is not that this is the first time it was done, that this is the first time that this company was doing something like this. These GHF and Safe Reach Solutions and UG Solutions didn't even exist until February and March of 2025. So I figured what I felt was that okay, there's a lot of complexity in this and trying to figure this out, and we've got to figure some things out, but we can get there. We can. I've been involved in a lot of military operations and a lot of planning, and experienced enough to know that plans don't always go exactly as you want, and you've got to adjust on the way. So that's how I kind of felt in the beginning, that it was very disorganized, very haphazard, lacking of good leadership. But I felt that we were all trying to figure it out. Within the first few days, beyond that, it became very, very apparent to me that this was not incompetency, this was not lack of experience, that the lack of planning and the lack of resourcing that went into the actual distribution plan for aid, was that because that aspect of the operation was completely ignored. This operation under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not intended to distribute, deliver aid, and feed a starving population. It is an appendage of the Israeli Defense Force under Kogat, the Israeli Office of Governance in the Territories, as a deliberate plan to displace and starve the population. So when I came to that understanding, I realized that okay, the lack of attention and planning to the humanitarian aid aspect of this, that's not an accident. They did no planning and resources was put into it because the intent is not to do that. So once it became more and more apparent to me that this plan of humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid, that humanitarian assistance was not the intent of this operation. It was a facade. The humanitarian assistance was kind of the shell, if you will, the outer doll of the Russian nesting doll that enclosed everything else. It was the humanitarian assistance piece was just the camouflage for what was really happening.
What was the command structure? Who were the people you met there who passed on information to you about what you were supposed to do? Also, tell us more about what kind of role that you personally were doing. You are a combat specialist. You are not someone who is trained in aid delivery as such. So, what kind of work did you do there? And uh, who were your boss there as when you were operating on ground, and what was the relationship with the IDF of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundations and the Safe Reach and UG Solution?
So again, what I want to reiterate is that I through my military career, I had quite a bit of experience in humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid, but by no means am I considered, an expert or well versed in it. I've done it before. I've been a part of it before, but comparatively to what the UN can provide or what other specialists could provide, I didn't have that level of expertise. But again, I want to remind you that I went on this contract specifically under the security apparatus to provide the security piece. So my role going in wasn't necessarily the humanitarian assistance piece. That was under Safe Reach Solutions and GHF. I was specifically hired for the security component of it. However, um, no one from UG Solutions, Safe Reach Solutions, or the GHF had a deep understanding or a history of providing humanitarian assistance at this scale, this magnitude. And so when I basically the way the chain of command works, if you will, is that GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, led by Johnny Moore, is the overarching kind of the umbrella. But there's really no company to GHF. They consider themselves a nonprofit, and there's really no staff or muscle to it. It's just a shell. Underneath that, you have Safe Reach Solutions, and the person in charge of Safe Reach Solutions, the CEO who's in Israel running this. His background is he was a career CIA Special Activities Branch chief, so covert operations guy, not humanitarian assistance, not humanitarian aid, not anything humanitarian at all in his experience. Um, and then under the Safe Reach Solutions, one of the companies was UG Solutions, which I was a contractor for that was providing the security component. So the guy in charge of UG Solutions, no humanitarian aid experience, no humanitarian assistance experience, not at all, much less at any scale to any comparison to what we had to do. And his history was when he got out of the army years ago, he was a entrepreneur and he started a uh, alcoholic hangover beverage remedy company, basically a sports drink or an energy drink to recover from hangovers. Um, and he's a criminal, and he currently here in North Carolina in Mecklenburg County has charges for a hit and run. This is the type of people that are running this operation. Within UG Solutions itself, there was leadership for the contract for those of us that were in Israel doing operations in Gaza. The person in charge of that contract, a UG Solutions employee, a man by the name of Johnny Mulford, who got out of the army years ago, almost 17 years ago, got out of the army. His experience in the army was he was a parachute rigger. He packed parachutes. He didn't have combat experience. He wasn't someone that had experience in planning, and he was disbarred by the United States Department of Defense, by the U.S. government. He was disbarred from contracting for involvement in fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government when he was involved in a contract during his time in the army. So, and he's also the Florida chapter president, or once was the Florida chapter president, and a national ranking member of the Infidels Motorcycle Club. So from the top down, the leadership, there's no experience in humanitarian assistance and humanitarian aid. There's no experience in operations of this magnitude of any scope. And just think about it, that the person in charge of the armed security, people that are going into Gaza with fully automatic weapons, pistols, machine guns, rifles, stun grenades, tear gas, shotguns, the guy in charge is a leader in an organization that calls themselves the Infidels, whose charter as an organization, as a club, is the eradication of Muslims. That should be shocking to people.
And what was the relationship of this security wing of let's say, the umbrella organization, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? What was the relationship of the security wing with the IDF? Did the IDF go alongside with you after Karam Shalom, or what was the arrangement between IDF and you guys?
So if you kind of look at the scope of the entire contract, I would say that UG Solutions, the armed wing, was almost like a sister unit or a cooperative unit to the IDF in terms of cooperation and execution. So the IDF provided us with, clearing the routes before we went in, providing security overwatch, securing the sites, providing our medical evacuation if we needed it, providing a quick response force to the sites if we needed it, coordination and communication between the IDF as if we were an adjacent unit operating in the area. But furthermore, as it was made very clear to me on June 8th by the Safe Reach Solutions Director of Operations in Israel at our main control center, our main mission control center in Karim Shalom, was that our client was the IDF. We worked for the IDF. They were our client. They were our boss. We worked for them. And that was not in any way hidden or a secret. They made it very clear that we work for the IDF.
Were you guys personally briefed by IDF officials? Did you ever meet IDF officials directly talking to you to do something?
So at the main control center in Karim Shalom and the northern control center outside of gate 96 near Kibbutz Be'eri, the control centers had permanently assigned 24/7 Israeli Defense Force liaison officers, senior officers who were in our control centers 24/7. Every day at approximately 11 o'clock, the IDF on our command centers would bring the planners, myself and others, and they would dictate to us how the next day's operations would go. This is how many trucks you're going to deliver. This is where you're going to deliver them. This is how long you're going to deliver. This is how much food. This is the route. Everything was dictated by the IDF. There was no cooperation or joint planning. It was dictated to us. And furthermore, all of the sites, secure distribution site 1, 2, 3, and 4, all of them are co-located right next to, adjacent to IDF combat units in Gaza. So the relationship in terms of the symbiosis between the IDF and UG Solutions and GHF overall was the IDF was our boss. We worked for the IDF. They told us, gave us orders, everything on how we would do it. And then they controlled every aspect of how we did it. And we reported to them.
If you could give us a brief picture of how it looked like from the perspective of the Palestinians or from those, not just the combatant staff, but also others, from the truck drivers to those who actually handed out food. What did the landscape look like? And if you could also tell us a little bit about the locations itself in the South, that would be helpful for a lot of our viewers who might not have a detailed image of the landscape that we've been discussing about.
So for all the viewers out there, if you in terms of following along, if you as you listen to this or listen to future, pull up, just Google Gaza, pull it up, because it's important to understand the landscape and the areas. And so I have this, but y'all can look it up yourselves too, so you have a closer look. But this is Gaza. All right, this is the enclave, and this is out here. This is the Mediterranean. Here's Israel. Here's Egypt. So if you consider the entire enclave, all of the distribution sites under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, all of them are down right here. Or excuse me, yeah, right here. So in the entire enclave, the only distribution sites are all the way down here. So everybody, all of the Palestinians, in order to get food, have to travel to the south. Once they travel to the south, they can't go back home because there's a military corridor right here. So once they travel south, they're stuck. They can't go back home. So these distribution sites effectively serve as traps, as bait to bring everybody south, because once they come down here to get food that they need to survive because they're starving, they can't go home.
Is this the Morag corridor you were talking about?
That's right. This right here is the Morag corridor. This right here is the Netzarim corridor. The Netzarim corridor separates northern Gaza from the rest of the enclave. From the Netzarim corridor, no one can come south. So no one in Gaza City or Jabalia can access any of the aid. Right now, as I speak, today, 2 nights ago, Israel initiated Operation Gideon's Chariots 2. Anybody can Google it and you can read all the reports. That started with IDF forces consolidating here south of the Netzarim and pushing into Gaza City. They're now clearing Gaza City, and all the civilians they're sending south down to these sites, where there's now been established, as of 2 days ago, a humanitarian assistance transit area, meaning all of the Palestinian civilians are being displaced down here. I'll get to that in a minute as to why that's important, but what I wanted to identify was that Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 is being conducted now, clearing the north. Operation Gideon's Chariots started in March in this area in the south, pushing through the central part of Gaza, clearing Khan Yunis, Rafah, Mawasi, Berish, all the way up to the Netzarim corridor. Why that matters is because the distribution sites and where they're built here, intentionally built here, force the Palestinians that are coming to get aid to travel. They have to travel through an active combat zone. They have to travel through active combat. Why that matters is because the Geneva Convention and international humanitarian law specifically obligates combatants or belligerents to safeguard at all costs, to safeguard and protect the civilian population. Even more specifically, to establish secure distribution sites or humanitarian aid sites for water, food, medicine, religious support, education, clinics, whatever the case, hospitals, whatever the case may be. They cannot be established in areas of active combat that directly put civilians in harm's way. These sites that are all in the south, they were built after Operations Gideon's Chariots had already started. Gideon's Chariots started in March. These sites were built in April through May. So they deliberately built these sites in active combat areas, fully knowing that the only way for Palestinians to reach these sites to come south would be to travel through an active combat area where there's shooting and tanks and machine gun fire and mortars and artillery. And that was intentional. How I came to know that was that on the 24th of May, the IDF escorted a select few of us contractors in leadership positions to go into Gaza to look at the sites physically, to physically go to the sites, because no Americans or GHF or anyone had been to these sites yet. The sites were selected, built, and constructed by the IDF. None of the Americans that were responsible for this humanitarian assistance had been there. On the 24th of May, before we went into the enclave, we got a briefing from the IDF, and they showed us a giant map of southern Gaza. On the map was where the distribution sites were, 1, 2, and 3. And along with that was their operational map, their overlay of their operational graphics of their operations going on. And I looked at that and I said, we can't distribute at those sites. It's an active engagement area in a combat operation. We cannot distribute from these sites. One, the sites are in an engagement area. Two, the Palestinians are going to have to travel through a combat area, active combat, to get there. We can't distribute at these sites. And I was told, you don't know what you're talking about. We'll see when we get on the ground, and we'll see what it's really like. My position on that was like, well, I surely do know what I'm talking about, because for 25 years in the United States Army as an officer and a professional, understanding Geneva Convention, international humanitarian law, law of armed conflict, law of land warfare, that was my job. That is what I did. So going to these, when we got to these sites, it was clearly evident that yes, these sites were built in combat areas. When we got to site number 1 on the 24th of May in the morning, as we pulled into the site, there was a battle going on around the site. Israeli tanks, Israeli infantry, artillery. There was a battle going on around the site the first day we saw it. And I knew at that point, it became very clear to me that the distribution sites where they were built, why they were built there, was deliberate. It was not an accident. It was deliberate.
So, in your assessment, what was the objective of building the distribution sites right there? Was it to pull more and more people as much south as possible so that they can push them, to the Egyptian side, or even concentrate them in the Mawasi corridor? Or is it to just kill more people and intimidate them? What was the objective?
A little bit of all. So when I look at where the sites were built, initially, and people may say, hey, these sites were horribly planned and they've become death traps and they're this and that. How the sites were built, where they were built, and why they were built there is actually a very good plan. Not good in terms of goodness, but if you want to develop a plan to draw people to an area, to keep them there, and that you can then have them killed with impunity and just blame it on other factors, it's a great plan. They set up it's like, Auschwitz wasn't poorly constructed. Auschwitz was constructed immaculately for the purpose of killing. So when you look at these sites, they weren't poorly constructed. They were immaculately constructed and built for the purpose of killing. So why they were all built in the South? Ask yourselves, to any viewer out there that can look at a map, ask yourselves, if the entire vulnerable population in need, the thousands and thousands and thousands of Palestinians that are starving and dying by the day, if they all live north of the Meron corridor and in central Gaza and in northern Gaza, why would you build distribution sites to the furthest possible extent to the south to then force those Palestinians to walk tens of kilometers one way just to get there to get food and no water, by the way? We're giving them no water. That's not humanitarianism. That's death. That's a death march. That's forced displacement. So when we got there, another thing that stood out to me from the very beginning that concerned me, that we're now seeing, this is happening right now. The past has become the future has become the present, and it is happening. This is happening right now. And I implore anyone to simply look it up and read about it. This is going on right now. Phase 3 is what they called it. I call it the final solution because that's what they're doing. When we first went to Gaza, into Gaza on the 24th of May, we started our tour at distribution site number 1. Distribution site number 1 is so big that you can fit 2, 3, and 4, all the other distribution sites, on distribution site 1. It is very, very large, almost unmanageably large. And I asked when we got there, I was like, why is this site so big? There's no way we can secure this properly. It's so big. And it was made very clear to us by the IDF that this site was built the way it was for phase 3. And I was like, okay, phase 3. I was like, what's phase 1? What's phase 2? And they're like, well, right now is phase 1. We're in phase 1 right now. We built the sites are ready. And I was like, what's phase 2 then? Well, phase 2 is when we open up the sites and we bring the Palestinians, we bring them south. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean bring them south? I was like, so if I'm a Palestinian and I leave my home and I come down here to get food, I can just go back home. And they're like, nope, you can't. When you cross south of the Meron corridor, and what I want to show everybody is that all the sites are south of the Meron corridor. In order to get to the sites, any Palestinian has to cross the Marag corridor. Once you cross the Marag corridor, you can't go back home. You're stuck. You get sent to, so after you get your aid, you've got your box of food or your bag of food, and you leave the site and you go back to cross the Marag corridor, you get sent to a camp, Mawasi, Khan Yunis, Nasser camp. You get sent to one of these camps. You don't go back home. So that's phase two. Right now, as I speak, the reason is for phase three, which is happening now. And the reason site one was so big was because it was always intended that site number one in the the most southern part of Gaza near the Egyptian border, where the Mediterranean, the Egyptian border, and Gaza all come together in that corner, the furthest southern corner you could possibly be in Gaza, was always intended to become the humanitarian assistance village, the humanitarian assistance transit area, where all the Palestinians would be consolidated in the south, clearing out the entire enclave of any Palestinian. That's happening right now. Site number one has been upgraded, and right now, as combat operations are going into Gaza City, all Palestinians are being pushed out of Gaza and Jabalia to the south, and continue to be forced all the way down south to this humanitarian assistance transit area. This Hatta is what they call it. So the question I have for the world, and the question I have for anybody that's taking this serious, what are we going to do about it? Because right now, phase one, build these sites, make them operational. Phase two, continue Operation Gideon's Chariot, clear central Gaza, move Palestinians to the south. Phase three, Operation Gideon's Chariots 2, clear the north, continue to move Palestinians to the south, and consolidate all of them in the south. What's phase four? What happens next? I've heard everything from we're going to ship the Palestinians to other countries. I've heard everything from, oh, they'll just stay there and they'll just live there from now on. What I'm afraid of is that the intent in moving them there is to starve them to death or kill them. We are consolidating the entire population of Gaza into the southern corner of the Gaza territory. And then what? Either option, any of those options, is unacceptable in regards to international humanitarian principles, international humanitarian values. Moving the entire population to the south, displacing them. And then what? Move them out somewhere? That's immoral and unethical. Kill them all? That's immoral and unethical. What? What happens next? Because it's not a matter of if. It is not a matter of if. It is happening right now as we speak. Every night you go to bed, every morning you wake up to eat breakfast, this operation, the final solution, is happening right now, period. And not in a matter of months or weeks, in a matter of days. Days from now, it is going to start to become very clear to the world what's happening. And we have a choice as a world, as a nation, for the United States, for India, for Australia, for the United Kingdom, from whoever. We have a choice right now. Are we going to sit back and watch this happen and be complicit to a modern genocide, the genocide of our day? Or are we going to step up and do something to stop it? Because it's already happening. This is happening right now. It's not even a secret. Go look into any news source about Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 and the offensive into Gaza City. The IDF are even making it very clear. We are moving all civilians to the south to these transit areas. They've made it clear. The Israelis are not keeping it a secret. They are broadcasting it to the world. We are going to forcefully displace and eradicate or transit out all Palestinians. Are we going to sit back as a world and accept that? Because if we are, there is a day of reckoning and there will be a day of condemnation. No one can say they didn't know. No one can say they weren't aware. No one can turn away and say, oh, we didn't know about this. We're going to own this, and it's not good.
You mentioned about the size of these sites, particularly Site 1, as you said, which I assume must have been handling tens of thousands of people. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the size of the support staff? And I'm thinking not just about the competence, but the entire staff that was involved in distributing the aid. And what was the schedule of the aid distribution in these sites?
So the schedule constantly changes. There's no set schedule. And again, I came to realize that that was deliberate, because when we first started conducting just or delivery and distribution, we we tried it in the early morning, we tried it in the late evening, we tried it in the afternoon, we tried it mid morning, we tried it mid afternoon. We kept adjusting to try to figure out like what was the best time in terms of the temperature because it's very hot. Um, Not interfering with Israeli operations to the maximum extent possible. Um, what gave us enough time to deliver the aid in time? All these things we had to factor into the operation. And the IDF, the Israelis, kept changing it every time. Like, hey, here's my recommendation. We delivered in the morning, we delivered in the afternoon, we delivered in the late afternoon, we delivered in the early evening, we delivered at night. Like the best time to deliver for safety, security, temperature outside, the ability for them to get food and get back to where they need to be before it gets too hot out. Like all these factors. And our position was that hey, the early morning hours are the best. And as soon as we provided that feedback to the IDF said, okay, well, then we're going to deliver in the mid afternoon. It's like, what? Like, we just told you the best time to deliver to keep the population safe is early morning, dawn. The worst time to deliver is mid afternoon because it's the hottest. The Palestinians will be standing out in the sun in large crowds for hours. It's the height of when operations are typically going on by the IDF in the area. Best time, early morning, dawn. Worst time, mid afternoon. And the IDF said, we're going to do it during the mid afternoon. Deliberately chose the time that puts the Palestinians the most at risk and their own forces at risk, to be fair. And that's the time that was decided that we would do delivery. Um, but even then, it still changed. We would say, okay, we're going to deliver and we're going to start distribution from the site at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And as we were doing it, delivering to the sites, the IDF would say, hey, stop delivering, start distribution now. And it would be like 1:30 or 2. That just put everything into chaos. And that was intentional. That was not an accident. That was not because of other factors. It was intentional. It was like almost if you could consider someone's, an NFL team coordinator. He's not down on the field. He's he's up in the booth, right, where he can see the whole field, and he's up there calling plays and figuring out the enemy defense and figuring out the offense and taking all these factors in, right? It's almost like the IDF sat in this booth as the coordinators to where, oh, we're gonna change this, we're gonna do this specifically to make it hard, difficult, and put at risk the population, the civilians. So that's one aspect of it in terms of that level of control in the sites. The question you would also ask about distribution. That is a misnomer. There is no distribution. There is delivery, there is dropping off of the aid, and then there is the opening of the gates for thousands of Palestinians to rush through the site. It's controlled, poorly controlled chaos and confusion and fight for the fight of the fittest and the strongest survive. There is no distribution model. There is no
And this is where
medical
the
assessments or
this is where
vetting.
this is where
Go ahead.
fires would be, and this is where fires would be opened.
During these periods of time, as the Israelis would rush to this, or the Palestinians would rush to the sites, that is when they would be shot at. As they left the sites in these giant crowds rushing out the site, that's when they would be shot at. So when you hear reports of 1,200 or more that have been killed
Now 2000. The
here,
latest reports are 2000.
2,000, which I think is an underestimate. My assessment would be that it's many more. So when you consider the number of incidents that happen right outside the site, on the site, near the site, in area around the site, that all those deaths are taking place. And then if you look at, and I've done this analysis, I've done this mental analysis to looking at, okay, the times of the most increased deaths where dead Palestinians or wounded Palestinians are being brought to Nasser Hospital or Yunus Hospital or Mawasi Clinic, being brought to these areas, correlates to the times of distribution beginning and distribution ending around the sites. Within a, you could take a finger and put it directly in one of the center of a site and do a 1 kilometer circle. And all of those incidents are happening within the close proximity of sites 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's not a coincidence. It's not a lie. It's not propaganda. It is deliberate. These sites were designed to be death traps. They were designed to force displacement, and they were designed to set the conditions for phase 3. Phase 3 is the consolidation of all Palestinians in the South. Then what? And that's what I say to the world right now. Are we going to wait to see what phase 4 is? Are we going to wait until it happens, and then when it's too late, we're going to say something? Or are we going to do something now? Because I'm telling you, phase 1, 2, and 3 have been executed exactly as planned. Are we going to wait for phase 4 and there's a genocide and we all look back and we say, oh, we should have known, we should have done something? No, we're not going to get away with that, because we do know. And if we don't do anything, we're the ones that are wrong.
I'll finally ask you a few broad questions, but if I could ask you one more question specific to the GHF operation. You have said in some of your earlier interviews that even though the GHF is registered as a nonprofit, a lot of the way to understand the motivation behind what the GHF is doing is profit. If you could explain to our viewers, what do you mean when you say that profit motive is what is driving the action of the GHF?
Well, so again, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, is simply a shell, a camouflage, if you will, a charade, a facade over what all this is. Safe Reach Solutions, the actual company in Israel that's responsible for the operations in Gaza, is a for-profit company. They are a money-making, for-profit private company. They are doing this to make money. UG Solutions is a private, money-making, for-profit company, period. It's money-driven for a lot of reasons and factors. But one anecdote that I would like to share is particularly the incident of water. Water is essential to life. You needed to drink, and the food that we're giving them, we're not giving them meals. We're giving them the raw ingredients to make meals. Those raw ingredients all require water to prepare them. Bag of dried rice, bag of dried beans, bag of dried lentils, bag of dried penne pasta. You have to have water to cook those items, and we're giving them no water. Not only myself, but a lot of people a lot of contractors recognize this on the very first day. Why aren't we providing water? And I asked that question of the leadership, and I was told it's not in the contract. I was like, what do you mean it's not in the contract? I mean, we're delivering humanitarian aid, aren't we? That's food and water at a minimum? At a minimum. No medicine, no baby formula, no clothes, no hygiene products, no propane, no fuel, nothing. Just dried ingredients in a box. No water. And when I asked that, it was said, well, it's not in the contract. And what they meant by that was that the contract that we have from the Israeli government to Safe Reach Solutions to do this work, it's a contract, and the IDF are our client. That contract doesn't stipulate water. So if you were going to the grocery store and I gave you a list, that's your contract. I'm paying you to go to the grocery store for me, and I'm giving you a list of things to get, and you come back and everybody's like, where's the water? Where was the water? And your answer would be, well, it's not on the list. They didn't give me money to buy water. I don't have it. So that's one reason. It's not in the contract. But two, as was explained to me, that to deliver water would be too expensive. That for every one equal truck of water, because the water is heavy, 8 pounds per for quart. So when you so when you take the water and you put it on a truck, you can't fill up the whole truck with water. You have to disperse that between 3 trucks to equal 1 truck of water by volume. So their
One
Safe
truck of
Breed
food.
Solutions,
One truck of
yes,
food.
compared to food, yeah. So Safe Breed Solutions comparison was like, well, we can deliver 3 trucks of food for every 1 full volume truck of water. And I was like, okay, that is true in terms of the math. But we're not talking about delivering soda or champagne or an aperitif. We're talking about water. Water. So the decision to not deliver water was twofold. One, it wasn't in the contract. Two, it's too expensive. Water. It's absurd.
One quick question on the site again. A lot of Israeli spokespersons said that even the people who were killed within the sites, these are Hamas fighters. Did you personally witness anyone opening fire from the side of the Palestinians where you were on the sites?
I spent every day once we started operations from the 24th when I went in to do a leader's recon to the 25th when I went to the sites to do a final assessment based on the changes we had made, on the 26th for distribution, and the 27th, and every day thereafter until the 13th of June. Never, not once, did I ever see a Palestinian armed, hostile, threatening, shoot a weapon, or return fire. Ever. Around, on, near, or within the proximity of the sites. Not once. But on a daily basis, every day, the IDF fired at them and UG Solutions contractors fired at them.
I want to end by asking a couple of broad questions, and this kind of circles back to what you were saying earlier about the selections of the sites in the most intensified areas of Operation Gideon Chariot, and how it is actually important. The implication I drew from it is it is important to even see the so-called aid traps or aid programs as part of Gideon Chariot or part of these military operations of clearing out people from where they've been living. Um, you obviously were not part of the combat force that the IDF is doing, but you are a retired army veteran in the United States. You must have had a sense of these combat areas since they have been all around, even if not precisely at the sites where you were working. And you have been on other combat sites throughout your career. If you could give a your sense to our viewers about uh, what could be some of the differences in terms of combat areas that you witnessed elsewhere and what you saw in Palestine, or what you had a sense of in Palestine, in terms of whether there is an opposition, whether Hamas fighters are actually active, or whether it also ties to the bigger question about whether it's a war or a genocide. I hope that would be helpful.
I've seen a lot of war. I've seen a lot of destruction. I've seen high intensity warfare, low intensity conflicts, small wars, big wars. I have never before, from the places that I have been, not sitting at home on the couch playing Call of Duty or watching war movies. I've been there. Fallujah, Baghdad, Sadr City, Mosul, Anbar, Taji, all throughout Afghanistan, Helmand Province, Kabul, Uruzgan, Syria, Raqqa, Darwazar. The places I've seen are some of the places of the most heaviest combat that we've fought in modern day. Nothing comes close to the level of destruction and annihilation of what I witnessed in Gaza. Gaza is not a war. Gaza is a genocide.
Um, I want to end by asking you a specific question about yourself. There are people who have previously worked with the GHF and resigned, but you are perhaps the only one who have chosen to become a whistleblower. And it does come with a cost. There is constant smearing, and I don't know if you have got threats, but that's not uncommon for others who have been speaking for the Palestinian rights. Um, why did you become a whistleblower in your previous experience of working as a in the combat operations? Did you have any such instinct, or did you feel that you were able to you were able to present your concerns or register your concerns earlier in the way that satisfied you, which was not the case here? Tell us about why did you choose to not just resign, but also become a whistleblower and come out openly in the public?
War, combat, fighting is complex, complicated. Oftentimes you're in a dilemma of you pretty much have to choose the lesser of wrongs. There's no solution. But what guides us in that are moral principles. Our guidepost is ethics. As a world community, as an international community, those ethics and those guideposts are outlined in international humanitarian law and Geneva Convention. As an Army officer leading soldiers in combat, men and women, on multiple occasions, over 6 years spent in war, the guiding principle in that as an officer is that I have the responsibility and the duty to maintain those ethics. What I saw in Gaza from the UG Solutions contractors, not all of them, but some, and from some of the IDF, if I were in charge, I would have court-martialed them. I didn't have that authority. I didn't have that ability under this contract. I was a cog in the wheel. Had no ability to influence it at all, other than making my concerns known. I witnessed as early as the 28th of May, Palestinians being gunned down by warning shots, so to speak. The 29th of May, UG Solutions contractors firing at unarmed Palestinians and killing one. The 1st of June, a Palestinian man being sprayed in the face directly by a UG Solutions contractor with so much pepper spray mace that he was vomiting blood. On the 2nd of June, a Palestinian woman on the site, unarmed, picking up food from the ground, hit with a stun grenade and killed her. On the 8th of June, an Israeli tank firing at an unarmed crowd of civilians. And numerous incidents to recall. I made my concerns and voiced my concerns at every instance, thinking that this would be addressed. It became very clear to me that not only would this not be addressed, not only was it just being tolerated, it was by design. It was being tolerated because it was part of the plan. It was accepted because it was okay, because it facilitated the annihilation of the Palestinian people. And on June 8th, I was in the control room and observing site number 2, and 3 Palestinian children were lifted up onto a berm because the crowding on the site had gotten so full of people and trampling that these children were being pushed up against this metal concrete wall, and they could have been killed. So this Palestinian man set them on top of the barrier so they were not getting crushed. And the IDF liaison officer, a lieutenant colonel under Southern Command, who was our liaison from Kogat, the government office for the territories, was in the control room, and he immediately tells me, looking at the screen, get them off of there, get them down. And I said to him, I said, you know, the contractors on the scene, they're aware of it, they're taking care of it, they have it under control. They're children. Mind you, these children, unarmed, they had nothing. They had nothing in their hands. They were scared. None of them had shoes. One of them, the older boy, didn't even have a shirt. They weren't a threat. They were scared children. And he explained again to get them down. Get them down or I will, is what he said. And I told him, I was like, it's under control. They're talking to them. We're trying to help these kids get out of the crowd so they're not going to get killed. It's under control. He goes back to his desk, says something on the radio. I don't understand Hebrew. He came back. One of the contractors in the control room did speak Hebrew, and he says to me, hey, the contractor just, or the colonel, this IDF soldier, just told the snipers at Site 2 to be prepared to shoot them down. So when he came back over and he was standing there upset, I said, did you just call the snipers at Site 2 and have them prepare to shoot? He's like, if you don't get them down, then I will. And I told him, I said, you are not going to shoot. One, we're not shooting unarmed children. Two, we're not going to shoot into the crowd where if you miss, you're going to kill someone else. We're not going to shoot into the crowd where if you miss, you might also kill an American. No. During that dialogue, the contractors on the ground had beckoned to the children to come off, and they had jumped off the barrier, off of the site, and they left the site. They were no longer in the crowd and no longer on the berm. So the shooting didn't happen, but that Israeli officer, was primed, ready, and absolutely committed to potentially shooting these children and killing them. What crossed my line for me is that the Safe Reach Solutions, our higher headquarters, our bosses, the operations director for Safe Reach Solutions said to me, don't say no to the client. And I said, excuse me, what do you mean don't say no to the client? Who's the client? He said, the IDF are our client. We work for the IDF. Don't say no to the client. And I was like, are we supposed to just agree to and go along with killing children, killing unarmed civilians? If the IDF want to make that decision, that's on them. That's their call. This is their war. This is their authority. This is their call. Don't say no to the client. That was shocking to me. Shocking to me that an American company spending American tax dollars in Gaza would be complicit, or at a minimum, turn a blind eye to the murder of children. So that's what led to my resignation.
We'll leave it there, Anthony. This was very helpful in terms of getting a sense of what has been going on in ground. Not often we get to interview eyewitness account, and this was a great opportunity for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a great day. And I appreciate the opportunity. And be
You
well.
too.
Thank you.
You too. Have a wonderful rest of the day ahead. Bye.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.